Yep, thank you. Okay, so I'll address amendments 1, 5, 6, 7 and 8 together regarding the creation of a white list of countries approved for the export of greyhounds and a report on greyhound exports. But before I address the specifics of the amendments, I'd like to emphasise that the Greyhound Racing Bill is primarily an industry bill. The purpose of the bill is to improve the governance of Bord na Gán, strengthen regulatory controls in the industry, modernise sanctions and improve integrity as identified in a number of reports on the sector. The Welfare of Greyhounds Act 2011 and the Animal Health and Welfare Act of 2013 regulate welfare matters. Bord na Gán officers have been appointed as welfare officers and authorised officers for the purposes of enforcing both of these acts. Now to the amendments themselves. The amendments being proposed are very closely aligned with Deputy Bruin's Private Members Bill. Both the Private Members Bill and these amendments propose the creation by the International Greyhound Forum of an annual whitelist of countries to which it would be permitted to export greyhounds. The International Greyhound Forum is not a legal entity, but a consultative forum composed of a mixture of semi-state and non-governmental bodies, including bodies not based in this state. The Minister would be required to make regulations giving effect to the finalised annual whitelist. Also proposes a licensing regime for the export of greyhounds to countries which are on the whitelist. Export to countries not on the whitelist or without a licence would attract a criminal sanction. The Department did examine this issue. We sought and obtained legal advice from the Office of the Attorney-General on the Private Members Bill introduced by Deputy Tommy Bruin, which proposes legislation very similar to what is being discussed here. The advice from the Attorney-General's Office was that the Private Members Bill was incompatible with domestic and European law. The proposed legislation banning the export of greyhounds to certain countries, EU or non-EU, would face very significant legal difficulties in terms of both national and EU law, and it may also pose difficulties in terms of the General Agreement for Trade and Tariffs and the obligations imposed by membership of the WTO. Even if it was legally possible to ban greyhound exports to certain countries, I am not convinced that the amendments would have the desired effect. I do appreciate the motives, however, of the deputies proposing the amendments. They are concerned with the welfare of greyhounds, and I want to make it clear that I am not here to defend any other country's record on animal welfare. Firstly, the amendments would be unworkable and impossible to enforce. The reality is that the UK is where the majority of greyhounds are exported to, with 86% of greyhounds registered in the Greyhound Board of Great Britain's database being Irish bred. In terms of numbers, Bord na Gán estimate that this equates to approximately 7,000 greyhounds annually. It is not for the Department to police whether greyhounds sent to the UK or any other country are subsequently sent on to a different country. If the Department tried to police whether greyhounds sent abroad were subsequently sent on to another country, all we would do is add bureaucracy on responsible greyhound exporters and owners. But we would fail to stop an unscrupulous exporter who had exported to a country with a problematic welfare record. They could refuse to give details of such a sale, and as the UK or any other country is outside our jurisdiction, we would have no power to either compel them or comply or punish them. Compel them to comply or punish them, sorry. Similarly, it would be impossible to prove in a court that an Irish exporter sold a greyhound, knowing it would be sold to a country not on the whitelist. It is for these reasons that our legal advice is that this is unworkable and therefore should not be put into legislation. However, it is important to state that the deputies and I share the same aim of protecting the welfare of animals, despite our differences on the amendments proposed. The Department has a close working relationship with animal welfare charities on all aspects of animal welfare. Officials of my department have met with the welfare members of the International Greyhound Forum, which includes Dogs Trust, the ISPCA and Bord na Gán, to consider issues surrounding the export of greyhounds. Section 28 of this bill greatly improves the traceability of greyhounds by allowing Rossi Con Éireann to make regulations regarding the capture of specified life events on its proposed traceability database, including the export of greyhounds. Such a traceability system will ensure better accountability by owners of racing greyhounds for greyhound welfare generally, as well as giving Rossi Con Éireann the tools to identify problem areas and practices and react quickly. It will allow Rossi Con Éireann to focus accountability on those who export greyhounds and allow them to inform, educate and discourage those attempting unacceptable practices. Those who breach tracing regulations will be liable to the imposition of racing sanctions by the Statutory Independent Control Committee. Bord na Gán has always made it clear that it only encourages and promotes the export of greyhounds to countries that have established a positive animal code and practices. The Irish Retired Greyhound Trust, a registered charity funded by Bord na Gán, rehomes retired greyhounds abroad in the USA, Canada, France, Italy, Czech Republic, Germany, Belgium, Holland, Sweden, Slovenia and also at home in Ireland. And in 2018 alone, over 1,000 greyhounds were rehomed by the Irish Retired Greyhounds Trust and other charities in receipt of financial assistance from Bord na Gán. In addition, the Welfare of Greyhounds Act 2011 obliges Bord na Gán to publish a code of practice for greyhound, the welfare of greyhounds. The primary objective of the code is to set standards and clearly define what is expected of individuals engaged in the care and management of registered greyhounds. The Board proposes to expand the existing code to include provisions with regard to best practice when exporting greyhounds. These will include information and guidance on preparation of report, transportation arrangements and advising the exporter on the need to research the proposed export destination to establish the prevailing animal welfare code and legislation. Bord na Gán is a participant in the International Greyhound Welfare Forum, the organisation being proposed in Amendment 1 as a decision maker with regard to the white list. At a recent meeting of the forum, Bord na Gán advised participants that it would engage with and accept input from members of the forum in formulating the expanded code. And the Board has informed me that it is fully committed to the expansion of the code and that the expanded code will be finalised when consideration of the Greyhound Racing Bill has passed through the Oireachtas. Just finally, if you'll allow me, last Count Corla, with regard to the reporting on exports of greyhounds, it is currently not possible to retrieve information being requested by the deputies. Traces is the European Commission's multilingual online management tool for all sanitary requirements, and its use is used to record the export of dogs. About 30,000 users from more than 80 countries worldwide are interconnected through Traces, centralising all data. But Traces, however, doesn't differentiate between greyhounds and other dogs' breeds. It's not a category used in Traces for categorising any animals within the same species. So it's not possible to report on greyhounds exported to other countries. And given the difficulties in getting accurate data, the deputies should appreciate the great difficulties the production of an annual report on the export of greyhounds will present. It is not currently possible to retrieve the information being requested by the deputies, and therefore not possible for any minister to stand over an annual report which could be presented to the Joint Oireachtas Committee setting out the details in the amendments put forward by the deputies. So for those reasons stated, I cannot accept these amendments. Thank you. That's Count Corder.